Welcome back. A new Reuters Ipsos poll finding 19% of President Biden's 2020 voters are not sure who they will vote for in 2024. And they plan on choosing someone other than Biden or former President Trump. Now, 6% of those Biden voters saying they would now pick Trump over the president. The poll also showing 42% of Biden's voters in the last election think the economy is worse now than it was in 2020. And a new op-ed in the Washington Examiner warning that, quote, the Democratic establishment fears RFK Jr. has a path to victory. Joining me now is Democratic strategist and former New York statesman, is pollster and never back down data director Chris Wilson. David, let's go ahead and start with you. When it comes to the economy, things are far from perfect right now, but the president keeps running around and saying Bidenomics is working. That's a hard message to sell to people who are still feeling the pain of high prices.
It is, but when we look at this data, it really shows that Biden is on a bullet train to re-election. His Democratic foes or opponents really aren't showing up, and he has something to fall on, his record. He's been able to pass legislation, and maybe Americans have not felt it immediately, but at least when they hear that he's actually passed the CHIPS Act to create jobs here in the United States, he's passed the Inflation Reduction Act to increase employment, to reduce climate change. When Americans actually hear his message, I think he's going to do better and better. Those same polling numbers show that Trump has a problem with, if he has a conviction, half the GOP says they're going to vote for someone else. So, of course, we can't have this conversation in a vacuum. So with all the things happening in the current political climate, I think Biden is looking really good. And he's proven that in the last midterm election. So I think given all the, the situation out there, there might be some negatives. Yeah. But overall, I think Biden is a very good position.
All right, Chris, the New York Times poll says if the election was today and the candidates rather were Biden versus Trump, that they'd be tied neck and neck, 43% each. And it's interesting because David's bringing up this point of a conviction for former President Donald Trump that may turn the tide. But all of these cases that are mounting against him, they're coming out now. Other people would say, number one, the timing of this is all a little bit suspicious, but number two, it just rallies his base and it gets stronger as a result of people feeling like there's a two-tier justice system. So to me, you'll be looking at the border, you'll be looking at the economy, you'll be looking at a lot of issues in this country, but now there's this issue of, is the government being weaponized, and do I want to vote for somebody who is using the Department of Justice to go after people? Because they could go after the former president. They could go after you, too.
Sure. Well, I disagree with pretty much everything David said except for one thing, and that is the whole point of 50% of Republicans do say they would vote against Donald Trump as the nominee. And that's what makes this whole pile of Trump issues so frustrating when you look at the situation Joe Biden's done. As he mentioned, by the time we get into August, it seems to be certain that he will be facing 4 indictments in 2 states and 2 federal courts. And any other Republican nominee would be looking at a cakewalk come November with where the economy is heading and where Biden's own legal troubles are brewing. Again, you have 1 in 5 of his own voters who won't vote for him again. So Trump is probably the only person who Joe Biden can beat. And then to make matters worse, Donald Trump is spending almost all of his campaign cash on legal defense fund and spending none of it on fighting against Joe Biden. But I do think what's really important to understand is the economy is the #1 issue with voters, and that's an inflation issue. With the rate of inflation slowing and the fact that we could be going into recession, Joe Biden faces real troubles there. And if there'd been a recession to start his term, he might have clawed out of it. But inflation is different. It makes everyone's paycheck worth less. The Fed's rate increases and Biden's own ability to get more spending through have begun to reduce the rate of inflation. But it'll take years for people's paychecks to catch up with the damage that Biden did. And people are really feeling that. And that's reflected in these poll numbers.
Yeah, for the most part, real wages have been down. They've only crept up and started to turn positive very recently. David, I want to come back to you because that New York Times Siena poll found that 49% of non-white voters who didn't go to college say they would choose President Biden if the election was held today. And that's leading Trump by 16 points. Analysis shows that back in 2020, this group of voters overwhelmingly picked Biden. So they're still for him, but it seems like he's losing a little ground there.
Yeah, I think we see in these polls that the longer you're around, the more things you do, the higher your unfavorables creep up. But again, when we look at the current climate, I think that Biden is in a great shape. You just put up that graph that showed the CPI, and if you look at it, it's trending in the direction favorable to Joe Biden. And yes, I mean we don't have a crystal ball, so we don't know what's going to happen with the economy come next November. However, the economic data that is coming out is favorable to the person at the top. And I'd be the first to say that the president, there's only so many tools that he can deploy to help fight against inflation. Inflation is a global issue that's happening right now. But if you really look at the issue, Joe Biden has delivered. And we might not all feel it immediately, but compared to the rest of the globe, the actions that President Biden has been able to push through Congress, like the Inflation Reduction Act, like the CHIPS Act, are dramatically improving our economy. And you juxtapose that to his rivals, and they have nothing to stand on except for rhetoric and accusations of criminal wrongdoing of the Biden family that has not been proven. And so these are things that I would recommend that the Republican presidential hopefuls really focus on their platform
Yeah.
and what they're going to do for the American public and not just criticize Democrats.
I hear you. Issues are important. Chris, I'm going to let you take a stab at countering that.
Sure. Well, I couldn't disagree more about recent economic data. Let's look at Friday's jobs reports. It was not good, and it shows that it's likely that we slip into recession. That's a double whammy for people out there. The ones with jobs are struggling to pay for things, and a recession means their wages won't catch up for what Biden's inflation has done to them. And those without jobs, I mean, God help them. And for anyone who may have gotten a mortgage back and done it on an adjustable rate, they are really struggling right now. So anyone who can look at this economy and say that we're in good shape or that Biden's in good shape because is living in a fantasy world. And I think, again, Donald Trump is the only Republican that Joe Biden has any chance of.
All right, we have a little trouble with the shot there. David, I want to come back to you, though, because when it comes to this economy, there are a lot of issues for folks, right? We were talking earlier in the show about how people had saved up money during the pandemic. And as a result, you mentioned that inflation chart where we spiked up to 9%. And that was as a result of some global issues, but a lot of the spending that President Biden pushed through in this country. You mentioned passing legislation. A lot of the legislation was, was spending roughly $6 trillion. People now are dipping into their savings, have dipped. They are racking up credit card balances as well, just to pay for sort of everyday expenditures, not necessarily anything extravagant. So I hear you that the trend is in the right direction when it comes to inflation, but people don't forget how they were feeling when it was at, 9%. And they ask, why do we have to go there?
Yeah, of course. I think the president always has to take responsibility depending on how the American public is feeling. But what we can't deny is that Joe Biden has done everything that he can. He's worked with a divided Congress to still push through legislation. Where he can't push through legislation, he's taken executive action. And of course, it's easy to criticize. It's easy to throw stones from the outside. However, I think the majority of the American people will really appreciate that, hey, we have a president that's trying to get things done. He's not just talking about rhetoric, he's actually delivering. And he has a record that our previous presidents, both Trump, Obama, Bush, Clinton, I think they would really be envious in terms of how he's been able to actually get this legislation done. And we're in a time where we have more, knives and guns drawn on our political opponents than ever before. So they're under a microscope, of course, and we can take apart any piece of legislation. We can nitpick at it all we want. But at the end of the day, we can't deny that Bidenomics is actually working. And of course, we don't have that crystal ball. We don't know what next year is going to bring.
Yeah.
But right now, I say Biden is really looking good for re-election. And I think he's on this bullet train, an express train to re-election to the White House.
Okay. One day when we have more time, we can debate out that point of if Bidenomics is working or not, because it is a debatable issue. David Carlucci, thank you. Chris Wilson, thank you so much. Great to see you both.